Speaking of accuracy, and you actually mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to circle back to this because I was
Yeah.
curious. Exception handling in the intake
Yeah.
process, like what are the exceptions, and like what does that do to the process? Like, how does that tree branch? Any thoughts you had? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So like from my experience working at within the insurance industry,
Yeah.
and it was specialty lines. It was very, very specific. Like some of those exceptions could be, and yeah, some of the exceptions could be like you want higher policy limits than what is standard, right? And so how does that change the underwriting? How does that change the pricing? Because you have like your standard underwriting box, right, where things fit nicely, and then a lot of
Okay.
times if there's maybe so an exception could be maybe they don't underwrite that particular industry code that your business falls into, right? And
Okay.
so do you kick it out? Is there do you just decline that? Is there like a nuance to that where they might underwrite it, but they might price you higher because it's a little bit riskier, or
Huh.
the policy is written a little bit differently? Like what are so that's one example, right? And I'm thinking commercial lines, specialty lines
Yeah. Yeah.
specifically on that. Like the big example, right, is like um, cannabis, right? Like there's a
Okay.
lot of like if you're a cannabis like sell that, like a lot of insurance carriers won't underwrite that, right? So
Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
industry code, that's an exception to that, but
Huh.
you may not know that. Like you'd have to get all the right data and the right NAICS code in to understand that that's what that business does. So that's one example. So how does that kick out? And then like you could, even from a personal line standpoint, just
Yeah.
exceptions would. So what's interesting too is I wonder, this is not an area I'm an expert in, but I wonder if
Yeah.
like if so you get in the submission intake, right? And you identify that there's an error, like it hits up against some third party data set, and you've identified that there's an inaccuracy on that submission, right? Like how
Oh
does
yeah.
that
Okay.
kick out? Right?
Yeah.
Like
Back to like the
so
creditworthiness, right? Like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So you said that, and I'm not putting out there that anyone is insurance fraud, none of that. Like the actual just errors, like mistakes, like you forgot to
Yeah.
add the plus sign on like I have a second car, right? So it's like, is there like what's the process when you've done validation and it says like they submitted their application saying that they had a single car and now
Yeah.
they've got two others to insure? What's the process there? Like on a digital front end, like it says, are you sure? Like, because usually it's hitting up
Yeah.
against some database and it tells you what cars you have. But to the extent that you're doing it manually or not in that system,
Huh.
there's some of that too, I'm sure.
That's interesting. It also reminds me that one of the benefits you get from digitizing these workflows is, you sort of built a map of the process, and some of it's done by humans, and some of it's done by bots, and some of it you reach out to an external database. But exceptions are places where it like leaves the normal order, and if you've built
Yep.
the system or bought the right system, then you know how often that's happening. And I have to imagine out there that there are exceptions that aren't terribly exceptional. It's just, we haven't built a process specifically for them.